Hi, I'm Osh Ashruf, and I, along with Nemuna Ceesay, directed this sharing of the Gaza Monologues. The Gaza Monologues are a series of testimonies written by youth from ASHTAR Theatre in Ramallah in 2010, after the first war in the Gaza Strip. Tragically, these monologues are still relevant today and reflect the continued reality of growing up and surviving in Gaza. With this sharing, Noor Theatre is answering the call for theatre makers around the world to host readings of these powerful words on November 29th, 2023, the International Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian People. We hope through these words you will meet these young people and their dreams for a hopeful future despite their brutal present. Thank you for tuning in and for your solidarity with Gaza and the Palestinian people.
Before the war, I used to feel that Gaza was my second mother. Its ground was the warm chest I could lay on, and its sky was my dreams without limits. The sea would wash away my worries, but today I feel it's an exile. I stopped feeling it's the city of my dreams. In the war, the main electricity pole was hit by a huge rocket. All my uncles were at home with us, and the electricity went out, but there was another line working. Near to the house, I went to our neighbor and asked him for an extension so we could connect to the second line. Once we were connected and our house was lit, he came to take the extension back. We had a huge fight. In war, everyone thinks about themselves. During the war, a lot of people had 20 bags of flour and never had a shortage of gas, whilst others didn't have a piece of bread. They were asking their neighbors for bread and they wouldn't give them any. Most people locked up their things under lock and key and decided not to give anything to anyone, but others were good and helpful. Back to our topic. We didn't agree to return the connection to him, even though it was his extension that we were using, and for the first time I realized how bad we can be. We were punished on the spot. The house next to ours was bombed and split in two pieces, and half of it fell on us. We left the connection and electricity and everything and ran away to my uncle's house next to the municipal park. My uncle's house is close to a government building, and in the evening people started saying that building would be bombed, and if it was bombed, my uncle's house might disappear from existence. We sat there not knowing what to do or where to go. My dad kept reassuring us, "Don't worry, don't be scared, nothing will happen." We stayed like that till midnight. We kept hearing rockets and explosions, and my dad kept saying, "Don't worry and don't be scared." But suddenly he said, "Follow me. We're going back home." And he started shaking. All of us started shaking with him. My mom started screaming, and my uncle was in really bad shape. Anyway, all of us ran away in the middle of the night with my uncle's family. We ran home, couldn't believe it when we got home. Till today, I don't remember where we slept or how. The important thing was that we were away from that building. We found that our neighbor had taken the electricity connection, and we spent the night in darkness while his house was lit. I felt he was right to take his connection back. After that, my dad got a connection complex. He bought 3 electric cables and 6 gas bottles, 2 electric pans, 20 neon lights, 20 packs of candles, 6 packs of cans, 10 packs of wires, 6 flashlights, and 2 boxes of batteries. We're living in war, and we have to be careful till things get better. I'd got a complex worse than all others. It's as though I was generous before the war, or maybe I didn't know the value of things because I couldn't believe that there would be a day when I wouldn't find a drink of water or a piece of bread. But after the war, I became super careful with everything and anything. I started barely sweetening my tea, and if I broke a loaf of bread, I wasn't allowed to finish it. I lost my appetite for food, and I became really economical. My dad says, "Ahmad always has his pocket money." Of course, because I take it and save it in case there's another war. I feel like I'm married with 10 kids. I'm scared of life, of everything, of the smallest things, always worried. I feel that all of Gaza is sitting in moving sands, Any madness you can imagine can happen in a second in this place, and a lot of dreams may come true too. It's a strange city with no logic. China is now a third of the world, and they all work but can barely make enough shoes and shirts for Gaza. Gaza consumes everything, and the world attacks it, but it keeps pretending nothing is wrong. Actually, Gaza is full of poverty, and there are people who pick their food from the garbage. The tragedy is that things keep getting worse, and the biggest tragedy is that there's nothing that stops it from happening. Every pit has a bottom, except Gaza. I dream of living one day in freedom, and I don't think that's a big dream, but it's hard to come true. My dream is also to end the Palestinian division, which is giving us schizophrenia. I'm tired of thinking, but I can't stop it. But we have to plead, and God will provide. And to you folks, goodbye.
All my life, I thought Gaza was the biggest and most beautiful city in the world. But once, I went with my dad to Jaffa and came back with my head spinning. After that, I felt that Gaza was the size of a needle hole and wasn't beautiful, and it keeps getting smaller and worse. No one can breathe, and on top of it all, we're not allowed to travel. Every time I walk the streets of Gaza, I suffocate. Jaffa's picture won't leave my mind. I ask myself, where are we? We're so far from the rest of the world. That's why I'm always at the sea. Because I feel like it's not from Gaza. I keep writing my name on the sand, and the waves come and erase it. Before the war, I wanted to be an electronics engineer. But since the war, I hate going to school. I feel I won't be anything important in my life, and even if I will, so what? It's all the same in this city. Am I going to be the prettiest flower on a garbage heap? When the bombings began, all the schools in Gaza went home, except us. The principal wouldn't let us leave. The kids freaked out, and in a second, they went out into the schoolyard. The weird thing is that I'm in the Zaytuna school, the one near the Minister of Passports, which got hit first. With the first hit, a piece of rocket flew onto the biggest tree in the school and sliced it in two like a sugar cane. As soon as we saw that, no one stayed in school. Students, teachers, or the principal. We fled for our lives. I thought the only martyr that I would see in the war is the tree. But as soon as I got home, there were 4 martyrs in our street, still waiting for me to say goodbye to them. When I was done with that, 3 more martyrs from the same family in our street arrived. As soon as we buried them and returned, our neighbor's house, 2 houses down the street, was bombed by the army, and the house was wiped off the ground. Everyone died. I felt most sad for the little girls. I felt the war was targeting me alone. Out of all the people in Gaza, all day I'd been seeing martyrs. In the Shifa hospital, I saw a sight that I will never forget. Hundreds of corpses, one on top of the other. Their flesh, their blood, and their bones all melting on each other. You wouldn't know the woman from the man or even the child. Piles of flesh on the beds and lots of people screaming and crying, not knowing where their kids are, their men or their women. That night I came home from the hospital and was awake till morning from fear. I thought that it would only be that night that I couldn't sleep. But till today I see them in front of me and I can't sleep.
I feel like running in the streets till my headscarf flies in the sky and I fly after it. Sometimes I feel like being totally crazy, but I can't. It's the first time I say things like this. Maybe they're not the kind of things I say, or maybe they're the things that I can't express, or I'm scared to express. Why do my parents treat me like this? I look at the girls my age, how they're living their lives, and I envy them. I wish I could be like them in their confidence and freedom. I wish a ship would carry me to a distant island and throw me on its shore, far away from the world, from everything, especially the war. Speaking of the war, all the war was one pile, and Mom was the other. I'll never understand why my mom kept describing things to me that I'd already seen. She and I were standing on the balcony. They bombed our neighbor's house, and one of the neighbors died. We saw how the house was destroyed and how the corpse flew onto the street, and you can imagine what happened to the family after that. Did it end? No, it didn't. Mom started telling me about how our neighbor's house was bombed and how our neighbor flew from the house, like she was talking to somebody who hadn't been standing with her. And on it went. Stories from Mom all through the war, and I was the only listener. We'd be sitting watching TV, and they would say there was bombing or destruction in some place. The report would be 15 minutes long, but Mom's repeated report would be 2 hours. She'd talk about the report like I hadn't been with her. I started to doubt myself. Had I been sitting with her or not? I swear I was there. I was really there. I was sitting next to her. Anyway, thankfully Mom isn't with you. Otherwise, she'd give you a headache with her stories.
Gaza is a plane carrying people and traveling toward the unknown, landing neither in heaven nor hell. No one knows when it will land, and people may stay suspended like that for twice my lifetime. All days here are the same. There's nothing new. The simplest thing is that dreams and wishes are hard to make true in Gaza, especially if they're like mine. To be an artist, singing and acting and playing music. In Gaza, the only music is that of death and dancing on wounds. If I go abroad to study directing, how would society look at me? After I graduate, would the country be like now or worse? Everything for me is foggy and unclear. Like people's faces on Friday at the Ferris Market, and like the day the war began. The first hit was at the Ministry of Passports. My friend and I came out of an exam. It was the first day of the first term exams. We sat in front of the school gate talking and waiting for the rest of our friends so that we could go home together. Suddenly, there was like a series of explosions. I was in shock and felt like I was gonna die. We ran away and I was really scared. I saw the women running and screaming and beating their faces, and I had no idea what was going on. I felt like I couldn't stand on my legs, and the world started spinning. I fainted, and I stopped feeling anything. Then I woke up to my friend's voice shouting, "Amani, for God's sake, wake up!" When I woke up, I started crying, not knowing where to go or what to do. An older girl helped me and took me home. As soon as I arrived, my mother took me in her arms. I was very tired, but at that moment, I rested. I needed to fall into someone's arms. The hardest thing to feel is that your moment of death is near. The war was a black ghost that covered Gaza's day and night. It imposed its hell on people, on the earth and the sky and the air that we breathe. After the war, I had a breakdown. A big, wild wave overtook my soul. I was thinking I wouldn't be able to come out from under it. But it was like a hand was extended to me through the theater. a rubber ring that pulled me out from under the wave. Today, I feel a comfort that I haven't felt in a long time. And I hope I can always stay like this.
A day before the war, Gaza for me was joy and happiness, trips and going to the sea. Life seemed to be happy, and I wasn't thinking about anything. I had one dream, that Gaza would develop in art and sports. I felt that everything was fine except these two things. But it turned out nothing was fine. No art, no sports, no health or safety. It's all the same. Gaza stopped being the city of my dreams because my dream is to be an actor. Am I going to be an actor for 20 people in Gaza and wait till the border opens? If it was in my hands, I would try as much as possible to reduce wars, death, and violence. It's a shame for every drop of blood that falls on the ground. I hate the silence and the abnormal tolerance that people have. I wish all Gaza would wake up tomorrow and walk the streets shouting loudly, "Enough!" When the war started, we were playing football, and the atmosphere was strange. The sky was red. Suddenly we heard the sound of a plane. Never heard a sound like that. We were all scared and lay on the ground waiting for death. After that, we heard the sound of a loud explosion meters away from us. We started looking in each other's faces and silently saying goodbye. Turned out the bombing wasn't meant for us. It was targeting a car of men on the road above. But we kept lying down waiting for the second rocket. And all I could think of was my two older brothers who were there with me. I was more afraid for them than for myself. And I think they also felt the same way. I carried my sports shorts and ran away from the field. As I ran, I stepped on a piece of shrapnel. I took it out and went onto the street and saw them. They were 3 martyrs, and you couldn't make out their features. The first one's legs were on fire. He was looking at me, and I at him. Among everyone there, he was warning me about something I didn't understand. It was then I knew he was warning me about a car coming fast towards us. Then I knew the real meaning of death. And instead of being 3 martyrs, there could have been 4. I was shocked at the scene. I stood there watching, and when I woke up after passing out, I ran home. The war came and went, and we're still living it. The victims are always the poor people who have nothing to do with anything. Even when there's an earthquake or a flood in any country, the victims are always the poor people, as though there's a universal conspiracy against them. After the war, everyone started lying to everyone else. Lies, cheating, dishonesty, deceitfulness. For positions and for influence, the leaders and powerful people commit slaughters and crimes without batting an eye or feeling any guilt. Poor people get poorer, and sick get sicker. I've lost trust in all mottos. The biggest speech from the biggest leader is bullshit. All speeches in the world don't warm up a cold person or someone sleeping in a tent after the war. The crisis is that the whole world is watching us as though there's nothing going on and still making speeches.
Since I was a small kid, I've dreamt of being a famous football player. I believed I would fulfill my dreams. But today there are a million obstacles in my path. Before, there were no playing fields for adults or even kids. And then the siege came and made everything worse. If I was the Prime Minister, I'd pay most attention to the Ministry of Youth and Sports. I would build playing fields everywhere, especially in schools, and I'd let the students play freely, not be kicked out by the school guard. I'd abolish all club fees and preserve all parks. But dreams, security, hope, and the future are all words that lose their meaning in a city that kills the smallest dream possible. I was a goalkeeper, and my friend Muhammad kept telling me, I'm going to get a goal, but I always stopped his goals. On the 7th January 2009, a day in the war, I was sitting at the door of our house and it was foggy, and someone came to tell me your friend Muhammad was martyred. Of course, I didn't believe them. I went looking for my friend and I was really scared of the idea of death. I got to the mosque and saw the closest friend in my life, Muhammad, wrapped in the flag of Palestine and torn into pieces. I cried a lot, and I was sad because I couldn't hug or kiss him, and I started holding him. We took him to the cemetery and buried him, and I kept sitting there telling him I loved him, and I was really upset because he left me alone in this world. As I was leaving the cemetery, there was heavy bombing. I felt that the angel of death was following me and not leaving me alone. But thank God I'm alive, alhamdulillah.
Relax, girls. Don't be scared. It's just the sound of aimless shooting. That's what our teacher said as soon as the bombing started. After a while, her phone rang. She spoke a few words only. 120 martyrs. She smashed her phone onto the floor. She told us, go home, all of you. As soon as we went out into the yard, we saw our parents, some of them in pajamas, some in their undershirts, some barefoot. We were very scared. My two sisters and I kept waiting for Dad, but he was really late. So we decided to go home by ourselves, even though it's a long way. On the way, I saw something for the very first time. A martyr being carried on a coffin wrapped in the flag of Palestine with banners around him, people crying. But the weird thing is that the funeral barely had 30 people in it. Funerals of martyrs usually have thousands. Then I felt there's something a really big catastrophe going on in the country. I got scared for my dad. I didn't want him to come get us because I was scared to be hit by a rocket. I was also scared of dying, and I didn't want to die now because it would be a catastrophe if I died and no one came to my funeral. I started running home, and people were running around us like it was doomsday. No one knew where they were going because the sound of rockets didn't stop. Every few seconds, a rocket would fall and shake the ground. I felt that the streets, they were not the same streets, and the people were not the same people. Strange sights, sounds, smells. After the war, a lot of things changed inside me. I started hating going to the bathroom. From the second I go in, I can't wait to come running out because all the time in the war, I was afraid they'd hit a rocket on our house when I'm in the bathroom. In there, one would be in great focus. And you know the rest. I also started hating the morning line at school when the war started. I was in the line. That's why today I feel that the minutes in the line there are hours of fear and worry. All school for me is one pile and the line is another. I started having terrifying dreams. All night I have a conflict within myself between desire to sleep and fear of nightmares. Sleep became a monster hiding behind my eyelids. I stay like that till morning. I don't even know when I slept and when I woke up. I want to become an actress. And this is a hard dream to fulfill in Gaza, especially for girls, but I tell myself it's a shame for the people in Gaza to be deprived of my talent, because I could become an important actress. But if they don't want me to hell with them, I'll go to any country and act there. Because Gazans are deprived of everything anyway. It doesn't stop at the theater. Sometimes I think people in Gaza, they can barely find food. How they're going to find the theater? You know? I wish I could live in a democratic society with peace and 20 cinemas and keep watching movies and flying in my imagination and dreaming.
When I was young, I used to feel that I was the happiest child in the world. But the more I grow and my mind grows, the more my worry grows because I start to understand things that I did not. I started to know the meaning of a deprived child. The thing that upsets me and makes me cry the most are children's tears. All children in the world, regardless of their nationality, religion, or color. When I grow up, I want to be a pediatrician, and that's the hope that gives me a big push in life, even though I'm fed up, bored, and sad because Gaza doesn't have life anymore. Yesterday I was sitting in school and I heard the sound of planes. I got really scared. I wanted to run away from school. I felt I was going to die because I remembered the war. The scenes of war won't leave my mind. On the third day of the war, my family was sitting together talking about what was happening in the war, and my grandmother was reassuring us so we wouldn't be scared. We were actually calmed, even though the sound of rockets didn't stop, but my grandmother's warm voice was calming us. The phone rang. The lines never cut in the war, so when we heard the sound of the phone, we were happy. Hello? Yes!
This is the Israeli Defense Army. You have 5 minutes to clear the house. It's for your own benefit. We have warned you.
I couldn't stand on my legs anymore. Everyone in the house started yelling. My grandmother was the first one to run away. It was the first time I'd seen her going so fast. My dad held me and my sisters and told us not to be scared. He was pulling me to leave, but I was going to die if I didn't take my teddy bear with me. I felt that I wouldn't betray him if I left him under the bombing. I escaped from my dad's hands and ran to the bear, took him in my arms, and left. We all got far away from the house and sat down to wait for the 5 minutes. They were the longest 5 minutes in history. They became 10. We felt like they were years that passed. I was in a whirlwind. Thoughts and dreams were thrashing about my head, and the world was spinning. I felt that the dream of being a doctor was very, very far away. I held the bear. I remembered myself when I was small, how I was always laughing. I want to go back to being small and stay small. I don't want to grow up. But the only thing that comforted me was the love of people who didn't leave us for one moment. Gaza is full of love.
The hour I hate most in the day? 12 noon. Every time the exams start, I feel that the war will start again. I can't answer any of the exam questions, and thoughts keep floating around in my head till I'm sick of them. I ask myself, is what's happening to me normal, or am I sick? People say the sea of Gaza washes all pains, but my pain is bigger than the sea. Because the last time I was at the sea, I was with my friend. We swam, played, and had fun. But now I can't go to the sea anymore. The Teletini Street is near the petrol station, and petrol was dear to people and expensive. It was a big deal to have a liter of petrol, and there was a war going on, and people were afraid to buy anything. My dad sent me to buy petrol. After I bought it, I went to the house of my friend, Zeki, who lives near the station. I was missing him a lot, and I hadn't seen him for more than 10 days. I got to his house and I was in a hurry because my dad wanted me to return quickly with the petrol. I went inside their house without knocking the door. His mom considers me like her son, and me too. I said hello to her, and to my friend, hugged him and kissed him and said hello to his brothers and quickly left. When there were 20 meters between me and their house, I heard the loud sound of a plane, and after that, the sound of a rocket falling on my friend's house. People started screaming and that the house was bombed, and I couldn't believe it. I looked back at my friend's house and saw fire and smoke coming out of it. I'd never seen anything like that. I went back to running to our house, and when I got there, my dad told me, "Your friend died." No, he didn't. Everyone started telling me your friend Zeki died, and I didn't believe them. That's why I didn't go to the funeral or the hospital or the cemetery, because Zeki did not die. I always talk to him at night, and, well, not exactly to him, to his photo. I'm very upset with him because he doesn't come visit, and I stopped visiting him at home. I'm sure he's not dead, and for sure there will come a day when we'll meet. Then I'll blame him because I miss him so much. I have another friend living in Russia. He always tells me about Russia and the freedom and the safety he lives in. And I feel I'm not living. I start wishing that I would dive in the sea and keep diving and diving till I come out and find myself in Russia.
What I love most in Gaza is people's kindness and simplicity. And what I hate most is the political party fanaticism. Sometimes I feel that there's a contradiction between all this love and kindness that people have and this evil that controls the surface. If it was in my hands, I'd solve the problem of the Palestinian division tomorrow. In the war, they assassinated a big Hamas leader. All the media in the world covered the incident. But the whole world was in one valley and we were in another. Because Modi and Saluma, my younger brothers, and Dad had gone to our land that's next to the Hamas leader. We called them 1,000 times, and as usual, the Jawal mobile wouldn't go through, which stressed us out even more. Mom started pacing the balcony like a small bird from whom they've taken her children. She imagined that the balcony would somehow rescue Modi and Saluma and Dad. I was really stressed. I started crying and I went down to my aunt. My aunt started soothing me. She lied to me and told me that she had called and spoken to them. I know that she hadn't talked to them, but she was holding me and crying, and I was crying too. When I went up to our house, I saw that Mom was still pacing the balcony. I forgot to tell you that Modi and Saluma are 5 and 7 years old. They used to sleep in my arms, and my soul was connected to them. I felt at the time that my soul was going to escape and I would die. And honestly, only then I felt that there was a war on Gaza. Because I was busy with the computer all the time, and that day was the first time that I lived the war. An hour later, there was a knocking on the door of our house, and Dad came back with Modi and Saluma. As much as I loved them, this was the first time I felt how much they were really dear to me. and how much I couldn't bear to be parted from them. I put them in my lap, and I kissed them like it was the first time that I'd held them. And Mom stopped pacing the balcony, and it was the first time that I felt that she had loved Dad like this. After the war, I started thinking, why are we like that? Out of the whole world. They took our land and threw us out of our homes. And because we are defending ourselves, all this is happening to us? There's no water, no electricity, no phones, no gas. What are we to the world? Aren't we human?
Every day Gaza changes. That's why my dreams always change. And each time I make a step forward, I go 100 back. In the first hit of the war, I was going home from school and didn't know the road. Suddenly a man stood in front of me and asked, "Where's your house?" I told him and he took me home. I went down to the house quickly and asked my dad, "Why didn't you come get me?" My mom said, "It's normal, dear. Go study." I told her, "There are no exams. The war started." In the afternoon, they hit the government building near us. My mom said, "It's normal. We are used to what is happening to us." We went running to the neighbors, each one looking out for himself. After minutes, the neighbors' relatives started coming, and the house became packed with more than 100 people, but still things stayed normal for my mother. In the morning, Dad went to buy bread and stood in line for 6 hours, coming home with 1 pack of bread. Each of us got a half a loaf, and still my mom said, "It's normal." In the evening, my parents decided to go to the hospital and visit the injured, and I went with them. In the hospital, we saw many corpses. They were 4 on each bed, under and on top of each other. Only then, my mother said, "This is not normal." The war isn't over. The war is big, and my fear is to grow up with it. I'm always scared of a new war. If a balloon bursts, I'm scared. If a car hits a strong brake, I jump 20 meters. If a small kid yells, I start yelling with him. I stay up all night waiting for a new dawn. But each morning that comes does not differ from the one that passed.
The thing I love most in Gaza is that it's not like other countries. Now, other countries have lots of problems: famine, siege, division, occupation, bombing, destruction, and death. We have none of these issues. That's why I love Gaza a lot. Especially that the sewage and the streets are clean, people love one another, prices are cheap, everyone is happy, and the fish are healthy and do not swim in sewage. And that I definitely will not die of hunger, poverty, or a heart attack that half my relatives died from, because of so much happiness. I want to tell you a big secret that I'm holding in my chest and hesitating to say since I started speaking. Now, the secret is, I, my dear folks, am the reason for the war on Gaza. You might be surprised as to why. Because I never had a dream that didn't come true. One night before the war, I dreamed that the war started and our house was bombed and I was the only survivor. The next day, at 11:25, the airstrikes began. The first shock I got in the war was when the strongest teacher in school, the math teacher, hid under his desk from the first second. I thought, well, if the strongest teacher hides under the desk, what do we do? A lot of kids peed themselves. I started screaming, and everyone started screaming with me. I was screaming for our house that I was sure was destroyed, and for my family that I was sure was martyred. I went out running in the street, wanting to rush home to my family, but I waited for 2 hours for a car to take me, and in the end, I went home walking. All the way, I was imagining our house destroyed and my family dead. I got home and found nothing was the matter. My family was taking down the windows so they wouldn't break from the air pressure. But till today, I'm scared they will bomb our house. That's why, you can ask my mom, I sleep with 3 mattresses under me, so that when there's bombing, the mattresses will absorb the hits and nothing will happen to me. I hate dreaming, but dreams are not in our control. I think that Ali, that's me, before the war, is different from Ali after the war, who is a new person that I'm trying to discover. Before the war, I didn't understand anything about politics. I didn't know the head of state from the prime minister. I never listened to news. But today, I have become a political analyst. Al Jazeera this morning, midday, this evening, harvest of the day, harvest of the week. I started following all these programs and discussing them. I started feeling that politics and news are very important in our lives because they are what kills us and what gives us life. And also because I want to be the first to know if there's going to be another war.
When I talk to Palestinian kids in Europe about Palestine, I feel sorry for them. And I don't wish to be like them. Because they're in diaspora. They plant their dreams in a land that's not theirs. And dreams grow with the country and the people. I love life. I love to play and love people. I wish I could be the president of Palestine for one day, so I can enrich love and peace between people, end the hatred and spite in their hearts, and end the internal division. This would be my first presidential decision. But, unfortunately, I am not the president, and that is why there was a war. The war opened up with bombing like rain. We came out of school in fear and found the whole world running in the streets. People were looking for their sons and sisters and mothers. Everyone was running with their heads raised to the sky. Honestly, it was strange. I saw one of them from a distance, wearing pajamas, barefoot, and running. And when I first saw her, I didn't recognize her. But when I got close to her, whoa, that is my uncle's wife. The chic one, who does not leave the house without looking top-notch. Then, I was sure the war had started. It's been more than a year since we've been talking about the war. We lived it and continue to live it each day in detail because the TV and phone and doorbell are all things that remind me of the war, and I don't like them. You know, I even threw out my mobile. And I am most afraid of being alone. I think, what do I do if a war starts and I'm alone? Who will protect me? And I'm with the family. When I am with the family, I start to think, how will I protect them? I had a big dream to become an actress. But this dream started shrinking slowly because people in my country don't look at an actress in a positive way, even though acting is important. And it allows me to relay the picture of the suffering of my country and society to the world. But I have a second dream, if the first doesn't work out, to be a journalist. And the third dream is to make a family that I love and who love me. And the fourth is for us to be free. And for the flag of Palestine to fly freely. And the fifth is to see people happy, without death, destruction, deprivation, or war. And the sixth and last is for me to finish this monologue and get down from this stage.
Gaza's fish ran away, but people were not able to. They opened the sewage into the sea, and if the sea could talk, it would tell them, "Shame on you for what you are doing to Gaza and me." Instead of music and acting schools, Gaza became a school for shooting and murder. I'm very scared by nature. I'm scared of cockroaches and birds, and I worry day and night. The first day of the war, all the girls went home except me. I was the last one to leave school. I was sitting there, shaking, couldn't stand on my legs. Finally, I felt that if I don't help myself, no one would. I gathered my courage and stood up, shaking, and walked like a tree in the wind, all of me trembling. People were walking near me, but no one felt me. The sounds of rockets got louder, and the horror in my heart grew deeper. Usually, the distance from school to my house is half an hour, but that day I got home in 15 minutes because of my fear. It was the time I was the most scared in my life. Every second I thought I would die. It was the first time I felt this terrible loneliness, even though the streets were full of people. I got home and stood at the window. A rocket fell near our house, and I flew off the ground and landed on my back. For the whole war, I couldn't stand at the windows. I started sleeping in an inner room that doesn't have a single window. I think I'm still scared, till today, but I pretend not to be.
My grandmother and I were home alone. She was telling me stories about the days of our country, funny stories and sad ones. But she never told me a complete story because she always had to go to the bathroom halfway through. My grandma spends half her time in the room and the other half in the bathroom. My parents came back at 10:30 at night and went to sleep straight away. I couldn't sleep. I was lying on my bed, awake, writing my homework. Suddenly, I heard the noise of a distant explosion. I went to my parents' room and I took the radio to hear the news. I woke my father up and I told him, I heard the sound of a strong explosion. He said, "Be quiet and go to bed. It's just aimless shooting." Anyway, I went back to bed and the electricity was out. Suddenly, there was a huge explosion that shook my world. I pulled my blanket and covered my face, and something fell on me. I raised the blankets off of me with all of my strength, and it was the frame of the window that had fallen on me. The blanket was full of glass, and our entire house was full of black smoke. It was the day they hit the workers' union right next to our house. But that's not the point. The point is the stupid things that happen in which I can't find an explanation for. First, the world was on fire and we all felt like we were going to die, but my grandmother was looking for her false teeth. She was afraid that when she died, people would find out she had no teeth. Like they don't already know. Second, the house was full of smoke, but my father lit a cigarette and smoked it anyway, as if we needed more smoke. Third, my uncle called to make sure we were okay, and my father told him that we were all fine, thank God, but that all the windows had broken out of the house except for one. My uncle told him to break it, and my father did. I don't know why I'm telling this story. All I know is that we're living in a cage. a prison, like an encaged bird who wants to come out, but he's besieged. Kids are dying in front of their mother's eyes. Hearts are crying for them and screaming in the loudest voice, but no one hears. No one's heart softens. And no one seems to care.
You're gonna call me crazy, nuts, cuckoo. Go ahead, I don't care. Doesn't matter to me anymore. In truth, what's happening with me is not normal. I mean, losing trust in my friends is normal. Lots of people have lost trust in others. But what's driving me crazy is that I've lost my trust in shop windows and cars, in police stations and suspicious areas. In my personal philosophy, all of Gaza is a suspicious area. To make a long story short, everything that was hit in the war, I'm scared of going near today. I don't know how to walk down the street. I'd be walking on the right and get scared, then I'd move to the left, but I'd be scared, so I'd go back to the right and stay in that whirlwind. Where am I supposed to walk? In the middle of the street? See, on the first day of the war, I was in my brother's shop that sells computers and mobile phone accessories. A medal fell on the floor and my brother told me to hang it up. Suddenly, while hanging it up, I heard the sound of rockets and the glass fell on me and injured me. I was scared. I wasn't scared for myself, but for my brother. He was also injured. He was worried about our family. He told me, go up to the house and make sure they're okay. I went up the stairs and I wasn't scared. I made sure they were all right and they were all fine, thank God. I walked up the street to find out where the explosion happened. We heard a lot of explosions. Gaza became like a black night because of the smoke. But I still wasn't scared. I forgot to tell you that my brother had a cup of tea in the first explosion, which fell from his hand and broke. Do you think it was because of fear?
I want to write the most beautiful words about Gaza. But I can't. I can't not see the poverty, siege, and famine. Especially when all Gaza city flooded into Al Arish and emptied it from all goods in 2 hours. I can't not see the deprivation in every house, the fear, and the sickness. What do you want me to say about Gaza? From when I became aware of it, I was sad about everything inside it. Especially the kids. Even the adults. Youth. Women. Girls. Animals. Stones. Trees. Everything in it is crying. I'm looking for nice words to say, and I can't find them. The sea is the only thing that helps me dream. When I'm standing on the shore, I can imagine Cyprus, travel to Paris, fly to Rome, all while standing in the same spot. I go around the whole world, and in the end, I land in my bed, in our house, in the middle of the refugee camp. I come back to the reality of Gaza. The dirty market, overflowing with sewage, the carts, and what's on top of the carts, the suffocating smell, and the silent people who can't speak. When I look at the clock and it's 11:55, I start shaking. My heart beats fast. I feel that the war started again. Not only the clock scares me, everything that flies does, even the flies. I can't tell anyone about my fears so they don't call me a wimp or a sissy. I'm most scared for my older brothers. When a fly lands on any of them, I think it's gonna kill them. I start shouting and I run away from the place. That's why I'm now escaping outside the house all the time, because of the many flies.
Before the war, I was a child. But after the war, I discovered I'm not a child anymore. And that Gaza, unlike all the cities of the world, doesn't have children in it. When the war started, I was playing in the neighborhood and I found all the neighbors running away. I asked, what's going on? They told me the Israeli army told the neighbors that they will bomb their house. I went running home to tell my parents, and in less than a minute, we ran away from the house. It took nothing except the gas cooker because it's more expensive than gold in Gaza. I felt then that I'd never go back home. We went to my grandfather's house. The next day, the Israeli intelligence called my grandfather's house and told them that they would bomb it. We ran out and went to my other grandfather, the father of my mother. There were 5 other families there, all my aunts. My cousins and I became good friends. We'd stay up all night and talk about the war. I was tired and scared, and I wanted to go home and sleep in my bed and pillow. 3 days later, they bombed our neighbor's house. After the bombing, all the inhabitants of the neighborhood returned to their houses, and I went back to my room, but I couldn't sleep anymore. I've been wanting to travel for a long time. I have an uncle in Canada who's always sending me videos of him with his family in Canada's parks, seas, shops. And in the background of the pictures are Canadian girls. Like I need that. It's like he's taunting me. I started dreaming of Canada day and night. That's why I now like acting. I tell myself maybe it will work out with me. I'll become an actor and I'll move to Canada, become a Canadian, marry a Canadian, have little Canadian children. What language do they speak in Canada? It doesn't matter. I'll learn Canadian. Anyway, I don't care. They won't know I'm an Arab in Canada because I'm so blonde and blue-eyed.
What I love most in Gaza is Barcelona Park. I used to go there 3 times a week. I would spend the whole day on the swings, laughing and playing with my friends. But during the war, the occupation bulldozed it and destroyed it. I went to visit the place and started crying. I remembered where I used to play with my friends and where the swings were and my laughter. I want to be a lawyer so I can defend the people that have been victimized. And you won't find more of them than in the empire of Gaza, because I feel that Gaza is 100 countries and 1.5 million presidents. The tanks got to our house at 5 in the morning. Mom started gathering things from the house and everything turned upside down in a few seconds. Everyone started yelling and carrying what they could, and we went out running in the streets not knowing where to go. My grandmother said, "You can only go to the schools." And oh, schools, oh, schools. Our school is more beautiful than all schools. 100 of us used to sleep in one class. From the first night, I got into a fight with another girl about 1/4 meter and who was going to sleep in it. And I don't know how we slept on top of each other, like a mountain of old, discarded, forgotten clothes. 3 days later, we went back to the house and the neighborhood. But a lot of things had changed. The neighborhood wasn't the same, and the people weren't the same either. The biggest change in me is that I am a gossip. Honestly, I can't hold my tongue. Our theater trainer told me that this is normal in Gaza. All Gaza gossips about each other. But the difference between me and the people in Gaza is that they don't admit that they are gossiping, while I admit in my full mental capacities that I am a gossip. Sometimes I find no one to gossip about, so I gossip about myself.
Our future in Gaza is obscure and unknown, like a calm volcano that can erupt at any second. As if we're on a boat without a captain in the midst of a raging sea. We go right and left, and no one knows where to lean. I hear that in other countries, childhood is sacred, and children live their lives without problems and fear. But Gaza's children are forgotten and outside the picture. They're the ones who feel the injustice the most, because society treats them like they're not kids. When it wants, it makes them adults. And when it wants, it returns them to being children. And most people deal with them like they're only bodies, not minds. When I see a child peddling in the street or working in a shop, I imagine how the children of the world are playing and resting and feeling safe. Honestly, my heart breaks for them. And sometimes I cry. Gaza has no tenderness and no childhood. A boy is born a man here, and a girl is born a bride. Dad, before the war, was a lot more tender with me. I wish he would take me in his arms like before. But God help him, he's probably worried too. Because in the war, we lost 5 dunams of land in a second. The field that's 60 years old was hit by a rocket from the Israeli army, which burned all the oranges in it. My father, my brother, and myself could have also died by that rocket because we were close to the window. If Dad hadn't thrown me on the ground, all the shrapnel would have hit me. After the war, I visited Rafah Crossing and saw the flags of Palestine and Egypt next to each other, yet separated by a wire. I felt the difference between the two flags, and that this wire is the border of this big prison that we live in. I felt how stupid and unjust is the world. And I felt like breaking all the borders and ending all the differences between races and religions so that everyone in the world would be brothers. My dream became to live in a safe country, even in a small village in a distant island at the end of the world.
I want to be a specialist in the science of metaphysics. You know why? Because I think that Gaza itself is behind nature. And I got so much from my presence here in Gaza that I'd like to transfer my skills to others. The Shujaiya camp is always the center of events. Each time the occupation wants to invade Gaza, they pass by our house. When the war began, people left their houses thinking that the Shujaiya would be hit. It's normal in this case to leave our house. Everyone was calling my dad to convince him to leave the house. My brothers from Algeria, my uncles from the States, my uncles from Ankara. The whole world was begging my dad, and he wouldn't budge, refusing to leave the Shujaiya. 3 days with my mom having packed the house stuff, and we're suspended in travel mode. We want to go to my sister's house because it's safer there. After we were exhausted from talking, he agreed and said, "You go and I'll follow." How can we go and leave him? Well, my mum was smart. She left the bread at home, and you know how dear bread is in the war. As soon as we got to my sister's house, she called him and said, "Salman, we forgot the bread, bring it for us." And Salman fell in the trap and brought the bread, and we wouldn't let him leave. The next morning, we woke up to a phosphorus bomb that fumed the streets. We all started crying, our tears falling because of the phosphorus. The bomb was easier on us than Dad's taunting. He said, "I told you, let's stay home. It's better for us. There's no place like home." And on it went. What added fuel to the fire is that the mosque and house next to my sister's house were destroyed in the bombing. And you can imagine what my dad did to us. He wanted to take us back home immediately. No sooner had he finished his words than we were told that the house next to ours in Shujaiya was bombed and the front of our house ripped off. Then, for the first time, we all looked at Dad. We stayed at my sister's place. It became clear to us that wherever we were in Gaza, in the war, we were not safe. After the war, I started to always dress in a very clean and tidy way, so that if I die, I would die a nice death. But it would be the biggest problem if I was hit by a rocket, because I'd become 100 pieces, and I'd like to die in one piece. Wow. Gaza and Gaza's dreams. Our dream has become to die a good death, not live a good life.